right. Today we have Beth, and she is a birth mom. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I lived in California all my life until I moved to Utah. And so now it's evened out. But let's see, I wanted a big family, and I've had 8 children. That was counting Jared.
Yeah.
And I have 4 boys, 4 girls, counting Jared. And I wanted an open adoption. And so when I was pregnant, I basically had some issues in the beginning. There was a talk about with the birth father to have an abortion.
Yeah.
And so it was really kind of sad now that I look back, but it was, God works. And he brought my mother basically to an illness, and I ended up visiting her in the hospital. She begged me not to.
Yeah.
And so I talked to him, and I said, God, and I said, I'm not going to do it then. I'm just not. And so then time went on, and adoption kind of came to mind at times, but I just didn't know.
Yeah.
I already had 3 children, and it was hard being a single mom. I was 22 and it was going to have 4 children. It was hard. It was some choices I made. Mm-hmm. And I believe that I was prepared for this, to have Jared. And me and Kathy talked, and it was interesting because she had got confirmed. She was sunbathing, actually. And she said that she had this, the Lord told her there's a baby coming. And so this was probably, or maybe around the time I got pregnant. So just it all lined up.
Yeah.
And so, I learned that God has a plan. And basically I was I was 7 at the end of my 7th month, and I was just having a hard time raising the girls, and I was young, and I was big and pregnant. And I was doing dishes, and my oldest daughter had a meltdown. She wanted to wear whatever she wanted to wear to school, and I just started crying myself. And then all of a sudden I just hear on one side of my over here adoption, and I thought, what, like who's talking to me?
Yeah.
And then again on the other side. So then it really hit me, and I called a friend and I says, what do you think about this? And she said, not you. You are a great mom, and I don't think you should do it, or you won't do it, And I says, well, there's something here. So I just started praying and told my mother about it. And of course she told everybody. She was a hairdresser, so she knew everybody in town, everybody knew. So a couple had came forward and wanted to adopt Jared. And at the time I didn't know it was a boy or girl. And I said, I prayed about it. I said, no, that's not how I'm going. Yeah. So then, I was raised LDS, and I looked into their adoption agency, and mind you, I'm at the end. So I'm like, okay, God, you got to work this out,
right?
Find who you're going to, find for this child. And so then I went to them, and I stood across kind of like a desk like this. And I says, I need an open adoption. What do you guys do? And they're like, we don't do open adoptions, but this is how it works.
Yeah.
And they placed 3 families in front of me, couples. And they says, you pick one of them, and that's it. Yeah. And I was like, well, that's not for me. Nope. And I had to drive like almost 2 hours to this meeting.
Oh my gosh.
So, cause we lived in the high desert in California. So, I drove back home, and I'm crying on the way home, and I'm like, well, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
So then my mother came forward again, and she said, my aunt wanted to adopt the baby. And I was like, hell no. Oh, Is that okay to say?
Oh, yeah,
But
you can say
anyway,
that.
so, but I was like, okay, Lord, now what? What's going to happen? So my mother came to me and she says, let's just go check out my aunt.
Yeah.
And I said, I first was no, that's not it. And she talked me into it. And so I came to Utah. And that just interesting how it was all lined up. Still no on my aunt. And I went to a Relief Society meeting with her, and there was real hesitation to go because I wasn't feeling good. You guys have a lot of stairs here, and pregnant women
So true.
oh my gosh,
Yeah.
it was awful, you know. And I was, I'm huge. I wasn't just small, I was huge.
Yeah.
And so going up and down the stairs, and I debated going to this, and I was like, so finally somebody just told me go, and so I grabbed my coat and I went, and I'm sitting in the front row, and I look back, and my aunt's talking, and I have no idea to this day what she was talking about, but and didn't understand it then either because I'm uncomfortable. I'm in a chair.
Yeah.
I'm big and pregnant. Anyways, it just was not a pretty sight. So then I look back, and now I know her name, Nancy. She had a baby in her arms, and the baby was biracial. Mm-hmm. And automatically, because from where I was at, I was military. And so we saw all different nationalities. So I assumed that her husband was black.
Yeah.
And so, but I went back there because I was that kept me kind of like, okay, I want to go see this baby. Yeah. So I went back there and I said, oh, what a beautiful baby. Is your husband black? I don't know why I asked her that, but whatever. And she's all like, no, we just adopted. And I was like, adopted? What?
Oh
that kind of perked up, like, what?
Yeah.
All this time. Okay.
Yeah.
I says, well, have you heard of any open adoptions? And she goes, well, we did one and it was good. We did another one, bad taste in our mouth. It was just not good.
Yeah.
So I said, well, I really want to look at this. And I said, would you be willing? And she said, something told her, yeah. And so then she invited us up to her house the next day, and we went up there, and she had all these beautiful brown babies and her kids, and so lovely family. I think they have 9. And wow. So then I talked to her about it, and she says, well, I have a long list. I says, well, this is what I'm looking for. God has another plan, but I'm looking for a couple that don't have kids, mm-hmm. That are, in their 30s, just kind of needing that. And so she says, okay, I'll get a hold of you. And I said, okay. So time goes by. I'm almost in the 8th month.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is like, okay.
Yeah. You get
so
nervous.
A week went by, and I was like, okay, I'll call her. So I called her, and we talked, and she said, well, I says, if anything, I want the dad's a letter from him, just to show me, I think a man was going to raise my child, I never had a great relationship I did have a great relationship with my stepfather, but I never knew my real father. And that was never a need, but I just wanted a good life for the baby. And so she says, well, let me call you back. And I said, okay. So she gets off the phone. She calls me back. I still waited. I went and got on my knees and prayed. And I said, Lord, just send me whose family this baby belongs to. And I knew it would happen, but I had to give faith.
Oh yeah.
Give it over. Like, this is not me.
Completely surrender.
Yeah. Because I knew when I met Nancy, I was walking out of the church, and I literally was crying and barely could walk because it overwhelmed me how it went, mm-hmm. how there was direction and there was guidance and there was a place for this situation. And so I was happy cry, it was like, okay, I know there's a God, I do believe in higher power, So then she called me up, and I said, she said, okay, well, this couple that I told you about, they decided to back out and because it's biracial. And I said, okay, all right. Well, that's not going to work. Okay.
Yeah.
So then.
Which you're glad because you don't.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And the funny part is that they did adopt and they adopted an Indian baby from India. Baby 3 times darker than my child, right? I mean,
sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but yeah,
it's true I mean, and that's okay. That's okay to me. I don't care. But anyway, so I said, she goes, but I have another family. And, but they've adopted before and they have their own kids. And I said, okay, get me the letter. I mean, somebody just told me to jump on it. So I said, get me the letter from the father. And so I get a call back with the letter and she goes, I could mail it to you, but we are kind of at the end of things. Yeah. And she read it to me over the phone. And I knew then that it was the right spot, the right place, this was going to take place. And so I get on a train because I'm too big to go on a plane with I have a little one and she wasn't even 2 yet.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't plan that very well, right?
No, it's okay. I've been there. I'm listening to you and I feel like you and I are so similar in so many ways. And sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but I'm enjoying this. I'm loving this because I feel like you and I have a lot in common.
Yeah. And I think that, people need to know they're not alone.
Yeah. I agree.
We've all gone through our traumas, our bad choices or good choices, and you learn from them.
Yeah.
And so I get here to Utah and I get here and I'm living with Nancy and Madison's having a great time. She's 2.5 and loves Gary, Nancy's husband. And so I would sleep in and she would go down in the basement and just play and mess around down there. And he would, it was just fun. Everything worked out. And Kathy was told by Nancy, hey, let's not have any contact. Let's not, let's just wait till the end. And Kathy said, okay. But there was funny because I was the only one home several times and the phone rang and I answered the phone. And it's Kathy. And we start talking and it's like a long lost sister.
Oh, yeah.
It was just amazing how everything lined up. Yeah. And so they used to send us donuts because I got hooked on, I think it was Heidi's husband that worked at a donut shop. And Kathy's oldest daughter, and they would send over a box of donuts, and I ended up eating probably most of them. But anyways, these chocolate donuts that were just wonderful as a pregnant woman. Okay, so and they would send them every couple of days.
Oh my gosh!
Well, and then she was so sweet. She bought me. They sent over what was it? Something to sleep in, really pretty, just treated me well, so good. And so then everything kind of went, but I ended up having a cesarean with Jared and Nancy was in there with me. And I loved the support, it was just perfect.
Yeah.
And, so then, I had Jared and, there was a glitch in it when the doctor took him out. The whole bed moved. I don't think it was locked. And me and Nancy looked at each other and we were like,
oh no,
what just happened? Because he automatically yelled for the other nurse. There was one nurse with him and then the other nurse. And he's all like, we need you. And so we knew there was a moment there that something. So,
right?
Yeah. So Jared ended up having chemical pneumonia. It's where they swallow the feces. So whatever happened, I have a feeling that it just all happened at that moment. But that was hard. And then he was in the nursery, and then they brought him into me twice. And one time I changed his diaper the last time, and he still wasn't clean. They didn't clean him well. And to me, newborn babies should get a bath and, whatever. Yeah. But he still had stuff on him. So I called up Kathy. I'm like, you need to get your son out of here.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
And they wanted to keep him because he had the chemical pneumonia.
Yeah.
So of course, Kathy worked it out and
she always
called
does.
the doctor and said, "Hey, look we want our baby out of there. The birth mother wants the baby out of there. Things aren't right."
Yeah.
And so I left the house. I left the hospital without a baby, and it wasn't so hard. I had to come back and get him. They wouldn't release the baby to Kathy and Dieter. They wouldn't do it. So I had to come back and face this. So we had him, and he, beautiful baby, just lovely. And we got to Nancy's, and then Kathy and her whole family came over. Oh, and by the way, when I was at the hospital, your grandparents visited me.
Oh,
yeah. So I got to meet them, and that was special, very special. And so I don't know what happened, but something happened, and I ended up just overwhelmed at that moment when I was giving Jared John. At the time, I didn't know what they named him, but Jared John. And so I went in the bathroom. I was just bawling.
yeah.
It was just an emotional thing.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It wasn't even that I knew that the baby that was his family.
Yeah.
And now we're all connected.
Just a bigger family.
Yeah. Just, it's like I was just a microwave that just kind of cooked the baby, and then, anyway. So
yeah, I can relate to that.
yeah, it was just so it was a great experience. It was just emotional. And so then, I went back home. It was right around Christmas time because he was at the beginning of December. And so I went back home, did Christmas for my girls, just kept living life, and didn't really break down, knew did the right thing. And then it was probably about almost a year later that I was watching a movie, and it was about adopting or something like that. And it just hit my soul, and I just bawled. And I was dating my ex-husband now, and I just cried.
Yeah.
And he just let me cry. He's like, "Go ahead," And I says, it's like, I know I know with no doubts to this day that I did the right thing.
Yeah.
And I think that you go through things step by step. And I literally, even to this, I think that Jared was 8 years old getting baptized. We went to his baptism because when we moved to Utah, I know they were a little afraid because the birth mother's now living in Utah.
Right.
But it had nothing to do with that. It just happened to be that my husband he wanted to go to school and play football. He had gotten out of the military.
Yeah.
And even his coach that coached him on a football team told him, "You need to play football. You need to go join college and play." And so he did. He became a walk-on at the U. But I think their concerns. I mean, I understand that, and I tried to keep my distance, and when I was welcomed in, and they had no fears after so many, it took a little bit, but I think that, it just all came to the place that it needed to be.
Right.
And we had a lot of fun. We've gone up there for Halloween and gone trick-or-treating with them several times. And we went over, I think Dieter, he made food from his country. It's goulash. Yeah. He invited us up for a big dinner type thing. And so it's New Year's goulash. Is it New Year? Okay. But yeah, so I know that there's, we had this connection, and I know it was not me.
Yeah.
I just know I was kind of pulled, directed, and, everything, even though it was a little I had to learn to let go.
Yeah.
And that's probably the hardest thing in my life is to letting go and letting things, because everything you go through, or at least for me, I've learned from.
Right.
And I feel very blessed, even for my, things that weren't the trauma, in life. I think that I have learned, and it makes me a better person today, and I love their family, and I love Jared John Bean and their family, and they spoil him rotten, and I love it.
Yes.
And he gets everything pretty much, probably what everything he needs. And it was so cute, even up until this day on, what day was it? Valentine's Day? Valentine's Day, he sent me flowers and a card and a gift card too to go to eat. And it's just sweet and beautiful. And when we all get together, it's not awkward. And it's so funny. I don't think it was ever really awkward for me. I just wanted to make sure they knew that I knew that they were the parents.
The parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do that with my older kids too. Now my grandkids, I'm like, I'm not interfering. I know it's like, it's your guys' turn to learn from whatever goes on, mistakes, happiness, joy, you have to learn these things. And so I don't interfere with my grandkids. That's not me. And I got a wonderful compliment from my oldest daughter. She goes, you know what? You're a wonderful grandma. You never have came to me and said, stop doing this, or, do this with your kids and you should be doing this. No, I just enjoyed being a grandma.
I love that.
And well, when you have 8 kids, you're worn out. You're like,
I don't have the energy to do it.
Yeah. I'm okay with that, and so it's always, so my experience, I think there's women out there that have experienced that. Yeah. And then with the adoption agency, it was really funny. I don't know if Kathy remembers this, but we used to do a panel for people that were adopting biracial and adoption. Really? It wasn't just, and we used to do this panel and get together, and we'd all be on a panel and tell our story, and they had questions and stuff. And I worked my mother worked for the agency with the birth moms. And so I got to meet birth moms that actually had other kids and then adopted. And that was like mind boggling, because I thought I was the only one.
Yeah, but it happens a lot, actually.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And so I saw that several times, and it's like, there is a place for this, we're all connected. Mm-hmm. So it's not like this is my baby because I'm carrying it. It's just that sometimes that's just not.
You're just a vessel.
Yeah. And so then, like you said, it grows. The family grows. We're all entwined, and that's. And I was going to tell you about the agency. Probably the last panel we were on, we were walking away, and I went over to Kathy and I said, "Hey, Kathy, I think you should open an adoption agency."
Oh yeah, she talks about that all the time.
Yeah, and I'm all like, "Yeah, you'd be great," and she's all like, "Oh, too much paperwork." And I was like, girl, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
she does credit you.
Does she?
Oh, yeah. She credits
I
you.
remember
100%.
that moment where it was like.
Yep.
In hers.
Yeah.
We just got done.
Oh, yeah.
She said that it was you.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And it was so beautiful, because it's like, I knew you need to do this. I don't know how you're going to do this,
right?
But you're going to do it, right?
Yeah.
Whether I got confirmation, it's funny because I do get stuff like that done. Where I had a friend she had 5, 6 boys, something like that, and so they weren't going to have any more. And I says, "No, a girl's coming," and she's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, a girl's coming." Well, then she ends up getting pregnant, and I said, "This is a girl." And she couldn't believe it in her mind, but I knew.
Yeah. There was
just something, and it was her girl. Aww. And so things like this, it's like, yes, I'm in awe, because I'm sometimes the vessel, and I just feel blessed, and I feel blessed about Jared and Kathy and Dieter and all the kids, and, it was perfect match. And
Agreed.
Yeah, so. I love it. I love that, I think that there was one time though that I remember I was going to tell you the story about him being 8 and being adopted or baptized. And I was driving, and it was afterwards, and I just started crying, and it made me realize I could have done that. I could have raised him, but it wasn't. Then all of a sudden you're right. It wasn't my place. And I'm okay with that. But, those little things, I tell that story because I think that it's important that we go through those things. We're only human, having we're spirits having and having a physical experience. And so it's like, it worked out where it was supposed to be. And I'm better for it,
Yeah, I think the hardest part, kind of what you said, is kind of the what if.
Yeah.
And it's hard to...
8 years later.
Really quick.
Oh, that's okay. I was going to say 8 years later, what? It's like, it's like...
Isn't it crazy what will trigger you sometimes? Like I will be like so confident in my choice. I'll be so happy. Mm-hmm. And then someone will just say one thing and I'll be like, oh yeah, yep, that hurt. And that I need to take this time and I need to figure out why that hurt me and heal that part so then I can move forward being okay. Because like you said, I know he's supposed to be with his mom and dad. Mm-hmm. It's insane the similarities they have. Right. How it all worked out and, they're all of the positive things that have come from it. But I married the birth father and we had 4 other kids together. And there's sometimes like he actually came and slept over at our house not too long ago and they were all in the hot tub and I looked over there, they were all laughing and they were all having a good time. And I told Ryan, I was like, I just need a minute. And I went upstairs and I just cried. Because a part of me is like, what if? What if I raised him? What if I... And it's hard because you look at him and you're like, we still love you. We love you so much. And that's why we did what we did. Yeah. And your siblings love you so much. Yeah. And the older he gets, he's going to be 11 or 12.
Wow.
And... He's old enough now where he asks to come over. He wants to talk to us often. And luckily the adoptive mom is so open to that and so understanding and
that's
understands.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Understands that there needs to be that relationship if that's what he wants.
Right.
And so, yeah. And a part of me too, I don't know if you deal with this, but a part of me is like, what is my place? Because I want him to know that I love him and I want him to feel... I want him to know all the reasons why I did it.
Right.
And I want him to feel my love. But at what point do I step back? Like, how much do I give him? Does that make sense?
Right.
How much love do I show him? How much affection?
Where's your
my
place
in him? Because I know like nature versus nurture. I talk about this all the time. But we're still drawn to each other. And he needs that love. And... So it's like, where do you fall into?
Well, I think that like you're guided, there's guiding there. Yeah. And I think that like me, I've kind of just, when we get together, I notice that he is drawn to me.
Yeah.
And that was since he was little. Because the first time we came to Utah, me and my husband, my ex now, but we came to Utah, we went to see Kathy and Dieter, and that was scary for them.
Yeah.
And I understood that. Right. I really did. I try to, this is just me, being me.
Yeah.
And so they let me, and Kathy being her, and let me in her house. And I sat there with Rick, and next thing I know, he's in between both of us, holding on, like with, and he's just 2. I mean, I don't even know if he was 2 yet. And that was kind of an aha moment because our spirits are still connected.
Yeah.
Just like I feel my spirit is connected to Kathy.
Yeah.
100%. And Dieter and all the kids and so much blessings come from it. Yeah. But there is, I just kind of always stood back. I always felt like
that's what I do too.
Yeah. When it's time, you'll know. Jared asked questions and I answer them.
Yeah.
And that was probably 2 years ago. We were doing kind of like not a podcast, but we were doing something like that.
Yeah.
And he asked me like about the birth father and just little questions like that. And I just answered what he needed to know. And I think that's healthy. It's really healthy. I
agree.
And it really does. I think it really comes from the child. He needs to have that desire.
Yeah.
And he will. I think all kids. And it's funny because my daughter, we talked about Jared one time, and she says, Jared has physical and disabilities, right?
Yeah.
And he's brilliant. And my daughter looked at me one day and she says, if Jared didn't have, she goes, I think it would have been a lot harder for him and you. Yeah. Because I knew I was putting their baby in their arms. They would take care of him. Because at the time I was broke, know, so, and I don't mean broke money wise. I mean, broke in the head, the spirit, everything. Right. It was this overwhelming what I had done to myself, Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that the child draws you in, right? When he or she is ready to hear the story or hear the love. You had so much love to give that you gave him to extended family. Like you said, the birth mother is open. When I moved to Utah, after they saw that I wasn't moving here for him, right? I was moving because of the change in my life. Yeah. Then the openness came. Mm-hmm. The Halloweens, the dinners, the get-togethers, the panel. Yeah. To tell our story, and I think we helped a lot of people.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you did.
Because we saw that, we showed them that it's possible. Yeah. And things really do work out the way they need to. Yeah. And I am grateful that they stayed being an open adoption because they didn't have to.
I love how you said that, the whole reason that you place your child for adoption is because of your child. You want to do what's best for them. Right. And I love how you said, when the child's ready, then he will come to you and it will work out just like everything else has worked out with the adoption. Right. And I do think it takes some trial and error when it comes to open adoption. You need to, be respectful on both sides. And sometimes that can be hard. And sometimes there's some hard conversations that have to go on. And, as a birth mom, you never want to feel like you're overstepping. Right. And then, you want, like you said, you want them to know that they're the parents and that you're just here, as, like we've said many times, extended family, just more people to love your child who want to be there. And, they do a ton of research on open adoption and how it benefits a child and how having that open communication and being there for when that child does have questions and needs to know these answers, they're more likely to, succeed and feel whole. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah. No, total sense. And the thing is that I had children before and then I ended up having children after, not planned. Yeah. Cause I didn't have the desire to have any more kids after Jared John. That was I don't want to say that it was a
kind of a traumatic experience.
Yeah, or something. Yeah, you go through that and it's like, okay, I'm good with what I have, Yeah. He's where he's supposed to be. I have my 3 girls, I'm a young mom. So then I start dating my ex-husband and he wants kids and I'm like, then we shouldn't date. You need to go on. Yeah. And it just never happened. So, so I did eventually, God brought babies in my life and now they're all adults and very proud of them. And that's one reason I was going to say is the open adoption was important to me, not for me, but for the siblings. Right. The siblings needed to connect with Jared. Yeah. The siblings needed to have that relationship. And they have off and on. We have not been an overbearing family because like you said, you don't want to step over those boundaries because it's important for that child and your children and you. It's very important for it to all be. And sometimes I felt like I've stayed a lot of distance. And it wasn't on purpose.
Right. Well, and that's why I asked what I did.
We get busy, right?
Yeah, we do. But you never want that child to not feel loved. And I think that's where I was coming from when I asked that question was, you want that child to feel loved, but how do you go about that without overstepping in some ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Totally.
But I think that this is something that I've been struggling with now that he's older and he's more mature. He's more aware of what's going on. And so now I'm starting to think like, he's not just a baby. He's a child. He's a person.
Right.
He's going to grow into this adult. Yeah. What am I doing as his birth mom to help him be the best he can? And
just love him, because love is unconditional in my heart anyways. Yeah. And so I just kind of waited. I knew one day Jared would ask me questions. Yeah. I knew that was going to happen. When it happened, I wasn't ready for it.
Right? You always think about it, but then when it happens, you're like,
can I take a minute? Can I take a minute? Let me see what I want to tell you. No, I'm just joking. But, it's like, how do I answer that question for you? Yeah. How do I answer about his birth father? Yeah. All those questions and stuff like that. He did. He took me aside and asked me, and not very many, but he asked me a few questions. And it took me a minute to, okay, this is what happened, and I just love you. I love you unconditionally. I'm glad that my kids get to, if they need to, they can call Kathy and say, hey, let's go to lunch, Yeah. So it's like, we're all busy and crazy, but we did connect. The kids did connect. My younger ones that are now all in their 20s, not so much, because we've been so busy in the last probably 15 years that life kind of took happens. Yeah. And I love that we're kind of back in connection, just even talking to Kathy, him sending out a card and flowers, how sweet and kind and how loving, and that's what you bring to the table. You have answered a blessing for him. You've sent him to a loving family, mother, father, and I think that we gave him the best gift. He can have both of us. Yeah. And I think that's what adoption parents need to know, that don't close that door. Get to know her. Right. Because
I love that.
She is an extension from him. Yeah. And like you said, there's a drawn there. They draw themselves to, like your husband. Yeah. He drew himself. He was not even two, but he drew himself to us. Yeah, there's a spiritual connection. We're just having this ride right now, and you never know what's going to come about. Right. And so it's like, it's very important. I think, at least for me, it was that I gave the respect and the unconditional love to Kathy and Dieter. Yes. And let them fill it out. Yeah. Because they didn't know me from Adam. They knew, other than Jared. And so they had to fill that out. Mm-hmm. And, it's funny, Kathy reassured me several times that it's okay. It's good. We're good. And I was like, are you really? Yeah.
Are you sure?
Are you sure? Yeah. And the thing is that I think that it helped with everything by just standing back and, reaching out every once in a while, just to say, how's he doing? Or, it's all worked, and anything that anytime Jared's always open to the book, I'm good. Yeah. But, when he started asking questions, that was a tough mark.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm going to do. And
you'll know. Yeah. You might even have to breathe.
I know.
Because I really was like this.
Yeah, no, seriously, that's probably what's going to happen to me.
What did you ask me?
I know. Yeah, you always think about that day, and you always are like, oh, I know what I'm going to say. I know. But to even think about him now, looking at his face now as an 11-year-old with him coming and asking questions, I'm going to freeze. I'm going to be like, I don't know if what I'm telling you is, I don't want to, I want to be completely honest with you. Right. But how do I go about that? Yeah. So I understand.
That's a tough mark. Yeah. Because when you said you go numb, yes, you do. You freeze is like, and it's like, I loved our conversation, but after leaving, I'm like, I could have said so much more. Oh yeah. I could have told him. So I could have explained this or that. And, it played in my head, so, but it all worked out. He's doing good. I think he's great. Yeah. And
we adore him.
Yeah, they do. I mean, I'm talking about at one point, I don't know right now, but he had the biggest room in the house.
Well, he still does.
Does he have that? It used to be the playroom, right? And it's huge.
Yeah.
He's there.
I've heard about
He's
this
the
big
king.
room.
Yeah.
He has that room and a bedroom. He has
What?
two. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's wonderful. Yeah, he'll never. Yeah, I've never had to worry.
Yeah.
And that's because of our relationship with each other.
Right.
I think it's been such a blessing, you know. It's like sometimes I'm in awe just that it's all worked out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you have to have faith,
Yeah.
you know, through this. And
For
but
sure.
yeah, I think that I have a great story. I love my story. I love that
You do.
we are one big happy family. I know if I needed anything, matter of fact, I did need something. My teenage daughter was Madison, the one who was playful, like not even two, hanging out with Gary downstairs, and I was living with Nancy. Just one thing, she ended up going to live with them for a minute because she was having, you know, teenage stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, what do I do with her? Right.
Yeah.
So she lived with them for a couple months, you know, but it was like they opened their door. You know, they didn't hesitate. That's how they are, you know. That's who God picked.
Yeah.
You know, it just is. And all the little things you get through, and like it's made a stronger me, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, your story is beautiful. I really appreciate you sharing all this with us.
Thank you.
And it's nice to talk to someone who is farther ahead in their journey than I am, because I don't get to do that very often.
Right.
And I'm going to get emotional.
I didn't have anybody either. You know, I didn't. Yeah. My story was so different. And, yeah, I didn't have anybody. I had my mom, you know. Yeah. She was there for me, but nobody in my shoes. Right. So it is kind of nice when you say stuff. I'm like, yeah, you do freeze.
Oh yeah,
that is a true thing.
I freeze all the time, even like on normal, just hanging out with him. I'll be like, and I'm also the kind of person where I'm like, did I say something I shouldn't have said? Should I have said more? Should I have given him more hugs? Should I have let him know? You know, it's why am I emotional?
It's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, it's just like, it's like doing this podcast. I thought I was totally fine. I thought I was strong enough. I was healed. And just little things that people say. It's not even that they hurt my feelings or that I was offended by anybody or anything. It's just like, oh, a different perspective on something. Yeah. And then I sit there and think, and I'm like, oh, and I think that's why we have, staff meetings once a month.
Right.
And we have a little training. And this last training was about, you know, your child connecting with their adoptive parents and how, like, at what age they're supposed to connect and all of this stuff. And and I sat there and I thought, and I'm like, I'm just so grateful that my birth son was able to have that deep connection with his mom and dad, and that they loved him enough to spend that time to nurture him and to love him. Because, and that's another thing that I love about open adoption, is I feel like now I know exactly how he is, where he's at, what he's doing. And that's something I never have to worry about.
Right.
I always know how he's doing. And that gives me so much peace. And
yeah, it's nice to have that door open.
Yeah. It is.
And like you said, you stand back sometimes because you're like, I don't want to step on anybody's toes.
Right.
And I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's a real thing.
Yeah.
You have real feelings.
Yeah.
You have real emotions.
Yeah.
That's just the unconditional love you have for him, and for the adopted parents and that family, and joining it together. I think that, everything is real. You know, it is real. And he is having a brilliant life, you know, it's because he has both of you.
Yes, he's spoiled too.
I just love the best thing that could have ever happened that I did open adoption. Best thing.
Yeah. Well, and I talked about this in my own podcast with my husband, but I didn't want an open adoption I was so over Ryan and the whole situation and all of the trauma and things I had been through during the pregnancy and choosing to adopt, that I was ready to just be done and to call it quits. And it was actually the adoptive mom that sat me down and said, hey, look, these are the benefits of an open adoption. And, this is the benefits of a closed adoption. I really want to do an open adoption. And she's like, it's not legal in Utah, so you're not going to hear about it in your contract or anything. And I don't want you to freak out. Like, this is our gentleman's agreement and we want to do this. And it was hard because I'm huge on social media and I wanted to post pictures of him and I wanted to, I had like an album for each of my kids. I only had 2 kids at this time, but I wanted him to also be able, when he was older, to look back and know that like we spent time together and these are the pictures I have of him. And, we had to have some trial and error of her being like, hey, I don't really like this. This makes me uncomfortable. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you're right. So I'm going to stop doing that. Yeah. And now like because we went through all of this stuff and we have this open communication, now we post both families on all social media and, we see him all the time. But it does take trial and error. And it's just like any relationship, you have to set boundaries. You have to, do what's best for both of you.
Right.
And the cool thing with adoption is once you both can get on the same page that the child is the most important thing, then nothing else matters. And your feelings, even though they're very valid and real, like you said, you still have to push those aside sometimes and be like, no, this is what's best for him. Yeah. And this is what we have to do.
Yeah, because that's a fight. I mean, it doesn't mean, it's kind of like, where should I stand? Am I going to step on toes? Am I not? So I just stand back because it gives things to grow, relationships and family trust issues. I had to, now that I look back, I trusted them.
Yeah.
And it took my experience to trust them.
Oh yeah.
Because like I said, I'm a loving mom and I love all my babies, Yeah. And even harder when they're in their 20s and 30s. And my oldest is going to be 40. I mean, it's like, wow, like, but to just the unconditional love, the supporting. And it's like, I do this with the kids that are in my home, and the ones that are living all over here. It's like, I'll reach out, see how you're doing and stuff. But if you have a question, then come to me.
Yeah.
If you want.
Yeah.
I will have an answer or I'll find the answer.
Yeah.
But I don't butt in. And I think Jared's experience with the family, with him, that taught me a lot about, because my mother wasn't like that. It's like, I think that because of trauma in our childhood, she being a single mom at the time wasn't accepted. And then I think that she wanted to, I don't know if she wanted to take over being the parent when I was a teen mother, and she really stepped on my toes.
Yeah.
She's good intentions,
of course.
But it made it harder. It made it harder for me to grow and develop and fight against her.
Yeah.
And still be the mother of my children. Yeah. And it's like, I basically had to, move down in another part of the town just so I could have my space, so Jared's experience helped me when I had grandkids.
Yeah.
And that's not my place.
Right.
I have to have faith that they're going to be good mothers. I taught them to be good moms and be loving, and they have fabulous kids, even though they are my grandkids, but they're very thriving in life. And my 8-year-old is the youngest of all of them. There's 7. And I don't know if it has something to do with the laptop or media or, how much information she gets. Her brain is on go and she knows stuff that I don't know.
Oh, I know. I mean, my kids are like that right now. I'm like, where'd you learn that? I want to know more.
Right. Well, I told Heidi, I said, she comes up with words and she puts them in the category and it really does tell the story, what she's trying to tell you. And you're like, what is that word?
Yeah. What?
Can I have a dictionary? Because this actually really sounds like it's supposed to be there. And it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so
These
funny.
big old words. And I'm like, okay, I got to go back to school. I got to figure this. I got to figure this out. But yeah. So I think, the whole, situation between us, I think it's made me grow and made me a better parent and I think that we had more blessings than anything. And just to watch Jared grow, I think that's been fun, you know, and I'm so glad that it was important. I don't know if I said this, but my other kids to know him, you know, to even meet him, to go to his baptism, to, show up to the party, bring their own kids, you know, my grandkids and go trick-or-treating, you know. But it was just so many nice times. And it was, I think you get the best of both worlds.
I agree.
You know, that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah.
And, so.
Well, and going back to what you said, as a mom, you're supposed to teach your kids everything that they're supposed to know. And then, let them have their own lives. They're their own. I think that's the hardest part is realizing that they actually are their own human. Like they have their own purpose to be here. And I think a huge part of being a good mom is teaching them to listen to their own intuition and who they are as a person and give them the confidence as a small child to know that what they're feeling and what they're thinking is valid and that what they're doing is right. And when you can, make a child feel like that, they are going to grow up and be good parents. And you can take a step back and let them be their own person. It
doesn't make it any easier, just to let you know.
No.
Now they're adults and I worry even more about them and about, their health or mental health or how they're doing in life. And, I taught them all that unconditional love and they really are good at it, but you still worry. I mean, how many times do I just hold my breath?
Oh yeah.
Because, oh my gosh, don't do that.
I know.
It's going to put you here and don't buy that car that's, the payments are, $600.
Right.
You got, I know you got a job, but, you're not going to have anything left.
Right.
So so all those struggles and everything. But I haven't had to worry about Jared. Not a bit.
No.
Just because that is the open adoption blessing, it's like you get to know the family too. And and you see that how much they love your kid and how much they, at least, Jared has been blessed immensely over all of this. And he has a loving family on both sides, so that's, I think that is a good thing,
I agree.
I think open adoption is a good thing. I just, like you said, I think there's boundaries. And since we never really made any, but there's always, to me, there's, I want to be on this side of the line. Yeah. Kind of like my kids. You got to raise them. He's yours. I just love him and I just love you. And I just love, and I think that's why it worked. Yeah. Because, if you think it's about you, you're wrong. Right. You're wrong. It's not about the birth mother. The realism is the feelings and the emotions and going through it isn't easy. But unconditional love is, that's where I stand because I couldn't have done it without Kathy and Dieter in my life. They really, they've been a blessing to him, but to me too. Yeah. They've loved me unconditionally, and trusted really me and, had faith that I was not going to be this crazy, I want my baby back, right. That's just, they got to know me. Yeah. And they got to know that I was sincere and I wasn't right, but I was right by listening to, the direction to them. And, that's neat. It's just, I don't think you can learn it unless you go through it. Yeah. And I don't advise everybody to go and have a baby and give them up for adoption. But if you're in that position, you know, you might want to look at the open adoptions, getting to know the family. They become basically like your brother and sister, or, you know, or mom and dad, or they become something in your life too.
Right.
And openness brings that out, and it helps the heart heal.
Yes.
Because I just can't imagine me just handing my baby over to, you know, social worker, and that social worker takes it to, you know, to the family or whatever, and you've signed papers and it's done.
That's it. Yeah.
That just wasn't for me. Mm-mm. And back when I did it, there was, like I said, there was only Nancy did 1, 2, and 1 was bad, you know, and so I can understand that.
Yeah.
But I'm just glad she took my case. I'm glad that she, you know, she was a angel in disguise. She was the one who was the mediator. Yeah. I couldn't have done it without her.
Yeah.
And the Lord knew that. You know, he handed me her basically here.
Yeah.
She's right there with that baby. Oh, she's adopted. Oh, you know something about that, you know? And it was, I could see her or just her feelings about it because she had a bad taste in her mouth.
Right.
And I get that.
Yeah.
But I had to really, talk about faith and talk about, you know, hey, I'm having this baby soon.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that, Kathy and Nancy and Gary were angels from God, you know, brought me to Kathy and Dieter and family. And I love it.
It is crazy how things just fall into place when you're willing to be open to it, when you're willing, like I said, to surrender and to listen to yourself and take it slowly, take it step by step, and it works out. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you've gained new insights and perspectives on the topic of adoption. Remember, adoption is a journey that's unique to each individual and family. It's also a journey filled with love, hope, and new beginnings. If you or someone you know is considering adoption, or if you are pregnant and wanting to look into placing your child, please visit activeloveadoptions.com for more information. Until next time, keep spreading love and creating families one story at a time.